Welcome to the Progress Texas Happy Hour.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Progress Texas Happy Hour. Communications Director Chris Mosier here. Again, taking a tour through all of the Progress Texas endorsees who are no longer runoff candidates. They are now full-on nominees for the 2026 midterm election. One of whom is someone who has been in this kind of candidate seat for this particular race for a good long time. We've talked to her several times in her capacity as a candidate for Texas Lieutenant Governor. State Rep Vikki Goodwin is back with us. Hello, Rep Goodwin. How are you?
I'm good, Chris. Thanks for having me back.
Absolutely. Always great to see you. You have been in, as I said, your campaign for Lieutenant Governor has been going on for months and months and months now. I do want to ask you kind of the central question as we get right to it, as we reset for November and the final, goal, which is to defeat Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. Explain for the voters, and you've done this 1,000 times, I'm sure, but explain to the voters what's in it for them. What do they stand to gain in their lives by having Vikki Goodwin as our Lieutenant Governor as opposed to the continuing saga of Dan Patrick?
Well, I imagine every single Texan is thinking about the bills that they have to pay and the fact that prices on everything is going up, from gas to groceries to utilities. I've been hearing a lot about water bills recently.
Yeah.
And state policy can have an impact on that. We can make sure that our utility, even the private water companies, which is one of the things that we're dealing with right now in our office, are not gouging Texans. And, after Winter Storm Uri, your electric bills went up as a result. That, again, was because of the policy that was set.
That's right.
So your state leaders can have a huge impact on policies. And, of course, affordability, but also public education. And, we're seeing that the state could be taking over Austin Independent School District.
Yep.
And so the state has already taken over Houston, Fort Worth. They started to take over Wichita Falls. I think Wichita Falls ended up getting out of it. But really what the state ought to be doing is supporting our public schools and making sure that they're getting the resources that they need to be successful. And that's not what our current leadership is doing.
Let's go there for a second. I think a lot of folks, they hear state takeover. They don't know quite what that means exactly. What can you say about the what's happened since some of these state takeovers? Houston, I think, is still the most glaring example of this, and the biggest city in the state.
Yeah.
Fort Worth's a little more recent. How has the state done after these takeovers? How have these districts done since this happens?
Well, what happens is the state comes in and they removes all of the duly elected school board members and they replace them with different school board members.
Right.
In the Houston example, they put Mike Miles in charge. And we had a hearing, Representatives Christina Morales, Jean Wu, and some others pulled together a hearing to understand from school principals, teachers, students, parents, community members, what was happening. And that was after the takeover had been implemented for about a year. We heard so many times from each of the witnesses that it was just a toxic environment. And so that's not going in the right direction. We heard these stories of students who said that just simple things like they didn't feel like they could go to the restroom, so they would hold it all day.
Oh, wow.
Or they were checked every 4 minutes to see if they understood what the teacher had just said. Very militaristic, very toxic. A lot of teachers left. We heard from a teacher who had won an award for being the best teacher the year before, and she was fired.
Yeah.
So how do you go from being the best teacher to being fired? Or same thing from a principal. How do you go from being the best principal in the school to being fired? So it's really unfortunate. They also turned the library into a detention center.
Yes, that's a well-known story.
Yeah.
You have talked about what your plans would be as Texas Lieutenant Governor when it comes to the voucher thing that's going on, which is also, the way we see it here at Progress Texas is just part of kind of a multi-pronged attack on public education as a concept, period, in Texas.
Yeah.
Tell us, give you a chance to repeat that because I really like what you've said about that. What would Lieutenant Governor Vikki Goodwin say about the private school voucher scam?
Well, Lieutenant Governor Vikki Goodwin would not allow a budget to pass that has even $1 going towards a private school voucher scam. Now, if we were to have the same leadership we have now in 2027, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick has the idea of expanding on what we already have. So multi-billion-dollar program. And we've seen that most of the applicants are from families who didn't have their kids in public school to begin with. They're from wealthier families that really, they don't need this help. Who needs the help are our schools, our teachers, and the 5.5 million students that we have in public schools.
Absolutely. Very good. So now that we're past the primary, we can really pretty much focus on Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. The list of complaints about him from the progressive and Democratic side is very, very long and also kind of well tread. One thing he's been involved with lately that's made our radar are these various commissions about what he calls religious freedom. There's one at the state level in the Senate. There's one also that he's been concocting at the federal level under Donald Trump, which to me have to be related in some way or the other. Clearly, similar agendas and goals. What can you say about what Dan Patrick has done to kind of craft a role for himself, almost as this state's craft for theology or something like that? I don't even know what to call it necessarily, but bringing religion into our daily lives as a government function.
Well, it's religious freedom as long as you're Christian.
Yes.
Because he doesn't want to have anything to do with the Muslim religion, with Jewish, with any of the other religions. In fact, we had some schools that applied to be a part of this voucher program that were Muslim schools, and they were denied. So, he wants Christianity and isn't interested in any other religious freedom.
Tell us about kind of the mechanics of the way the Capitol would operate. The Democrats are hoping for some gains in both the Senate and the House, but chances are decent that one or perhaps both of those chambers will remain in Republican control, in the 2027 session. What does a continuing but probably somewhat cowed Republican majority, how does that operate under a Democratic lieutenant governor?
Well, I will tell you, my first session was 2019, and that year we had 12 Democrats flip House seats. And the Republicans really took a step back in that session, and they said, wow, what just happened in that election? It had a huge impact. We really focused on school funding. We put $6.5 billion additional dollars into our public schools that session. We didn't see as many divisive bills during that session. So the election will have a huge impact, particularly if we flip. If we flipped 14 Texas House seats Democratic, we would actually have a Democratic majority in the House. We don't have, not every senator is up for election this time, so it's likely that it still will be a Republican-dominated Senate. However, I find that when you remind senators, you are here at the end of the day to serve your district. You're here to serve the people. The people in your district, they need healthcare that's affordable. They need good public schools. They need jobs and opportunities. They need water. So I think that if we're focusing on the right things, even the Republicans are going to come along with us.
The distinguishing factor, the marquee event coming out of the runoff was the Paxton Cornyn race. The Republican runoff voters have spoken. They've chosen Ken Paxton over John Cornyn, which, of course, to a lot of eyes, improves things for James Talarico and his campaign for the U.S. Senate. It also makes me think that there must be tons and tons of disaffected Republicans out there, John Cornyn voters, who do not have any intention of voting for Ken Paxton. They might sit out. They might possibly vote for a Democrat, maybe for the first time in their lives in some cases. What would you say to such a voter who you meet on the campaign trail to convince them to push the button for Democrats, and not only for Talarico at the top, but also to run on down the ballot and vote for Vikki Goodwin and right on down the ballot for Dees? How do we convince those people to do so?
You know what? I always consider myself a problem solver. That's why I'm running for lieutenant governor, because I want to solve the problems through policy. And so when I'm speaking with someone who may be a disaffected Cornyn voter, I will say, what is the biggest issue in your mind, and how can we solve that issue? Let's not get distracted by what you think a Democrat is, because I think a lot of Republicans don't really understand what we stand for, because most people care about their public schools. Most
Sure.
people care about being able to go see a doctor, that rural hospitals are closing. These days, what we're hearing a lot about is the water issue and data centers. I just saw a new documentary about a huge data center in Abilene.
Yep.
I'm
Yep.
hearing about one in Corpus Christi. I'm hearing about them all over the state, to be honest. And even in rural areas, people are saying, this could become the issue for 2026. How they vote in November is going to be based on what you say about data centers. And there's such a concern about the amount of water and electricity that they use. And the documentary about the one in Abilene showed a ton of emissions, gas emissions,
Yep.
because they have their own gas-powered electric plants there. And they're releasing a ton of greenhouse gases. So there's a lot of concerns around that. I think we just let people know that we are here to solve problems, and we are here to serve you, make Texas a better state. Do you feel like you're better under the leadership of Abbott and Patrick or Paxton? Let's make some change.
So what's next for you guys out on the campaign trail? There's bound to be some, strategy shifts or travel plan changes that come out of the runoff towards the general. What will you guys be doing in the campaign?
Well, we're looking towards the convention at the end of June. Of course,
Yep.
We're preparing for that. I had a string of victory parties after I won the runoff election. So we went to Houston, where I was hosted by my dear friend, Representative Cristina Morales. And
Yep.
then I went up to Dallas and had a party that was hosted by the Honorable Harriet Earhart, who she served in the Texas Legislature back in the 70s and 80s. And it's just wonderful to hear stories from people who were there before me. And then just traveling as much as I possibly can to get in front of as many people. We'll try to go to some festivals, like maybe the Peach Festival, the Blueberry Festival, the Peanut Festival, things like that.
Yeah, let's make it fun. That sounds great. Tell us a little bit as we begin to close down here. Is there anything about the electorate in general, or any trends out there among Texas voters or potential voters that has surprised you during this last few months that you've been on the campaign trail? Anything that's come along that, either had you rethinking a position, or maybe things that you hadn't noticed that people were worried about or concerned about? Is there anything that sticks out that was a surprise?
Well, I really think that the number of people who are paying attention to this data center issue has become a surprise for me. I hear about it every single day, and people that are concerned about the electric and water prices as a result of that. We've had people reaching out to me about their water prices. They have a private water company that serves 53 counties in the state of Texas. And there's one neighborhood where their prices went up 4 times, quadrupled.
Wow.
And they said, we can't afford that. So I think just the everyday issue of affordability is so much more widespread than I understood. So meeting with people on the campaign trail has been very helpful to understand what their concerns are.
Very, very good. The data center thing seems to me like something that was just, hey, we're going to, it's big business. Let's go. Let's just plow forward. And the whole AI thing has, from top to bottom has moved a lot faster than our lawmakers, I think, have been ready to really study up and know what was going to happen with that. And in a pro-business state like Texas, you shoot first and aim later. And so I think that we may be seeing some of that, and hopefully we get some change in time to bring some of that to a halt, or definitely manage it properly, for sure. So we're pulling for you. It's Progress Texas endorsee and State Rep Vikki Goodwin out on the campaign trail running for Texas Lieutenant Governor. So glad to see you again, and you guys, be safe on the campaign trail, and best of luck to you.
Thank you, Chris.